Today's guest is Raul Rodas, a true legend in specialty coffee. From getting his start as a young barista in Guatemala to becoming the World Barista Champion, Raul has built a global reputation through competition, curiosity, and an unshakable love for coffee. This is a story you don't want to miss.
We're going to end up without coffee. One of the things that I really enjoy about competition is just having fun, man.
What goes through your mind? Is it relief? Satisfaction? Tell us about that moment.
It sucked.
It sucked? What?
Now, obviously, it was amazing. It was a shock. Instead of planting coffee, they want to plant cardamom, have more revenue.
It's easier to produce or makes more money.
Yeah, I think that the best thing that we could do is buy more coffee. If you're working with a farmer directly, like buy more coffee from them. It's going to be more sustainable for them.
Welcome to By the Drip, the channel about the people behind the coffee and the passion that fuels it. We're two brothers who spent our lives chasing something deeper than just great coffee. From walking farms in remote corners of the world to training and coaching the last two World Barista Champions. I'm David Crosby, founder of Rosso Coffee Roasters, the roaster behind back-to-back World Champion wins. And I'm with my brother, Cole Terode, founder of Forward Coffee, sourcing some of the most inspiring coffees from Panama and building lasting relationships at origin. This isn't just a channel about coffee, it's about community, an obsession, and the pursuit of excellence. One cup, one story, one coffee at a time. How did you get into specialty coffee? What brought you into our industry?
So I probably would say that I was getting into the coffee, not into the specialty coffee as probably everybody else. But I was really young. I was like looking over to pay my college. So I was starting to study designs and communication, which have nothing to do probably right now with anything that I do. And I needed to job. So at the beginning, this was in 2006, way, way, way back. And there was kind of a couple of, I was like giving up like, paperwork to people to look for a job. And there was a sign that says like, oh, we look for baristas. And for me at that time, a barista was a bartender or something similar. I didn't know what a barista was because it was like very new thing here in Guatemala. So I got there like, and it was basically an accident. No one was giving me a job because I was probably like a douche or whatever. And came to this place kind of like knocking the doors like, hey, have you called anyone? And they were like, no. Weeks after that, they called me. I got kind of like the interview and went to training for like 1 week just about espresso and 1 week just about making cappuccinos and stuff like that for in the 12-ounce cups and stuff like that. But after that, the lady that I asked for that job told me that I was the replacement because someone got sick. So because one guy got sick and who couldn't attend like that training, I was the one that filled up. So probably which is like in a accident or whatever, which is pretty funny that, So I started working in this company, which is like a chain of coffee shops here. Now they have like 41 chains, like more like a Starbucks kind of style. And I liked it. I liked it a lot because it was I always like to, just to be in front of customers and trying to talk. And, that's why probably like competition is I liked. So it's, trying to, just to relate to people and talk to them. And I've never been scared in that sense. So I liked it. It was very different and trying to enjoy like you didn't know how a coffee could change so much with an extraction or like espresso or like a mocha or like so many different flavors that it was like very cool. So it was like I started to liking it. And at that time I remember that I was into a lot of partying at that time because it was just like it's part of your age. And that coffee kind of like tried to push me into more not being in the parties every time because I was in coffee and I was like, someone could stay up at night in another shift. And I'll be like, yeah, I'll do it. I'll be like, I was really enjoying coffee. So I guess that was one of the things that I started into coffee. And these coffee shops, they were like probably like 12 or something. They were doing internal barista competitions. And if you go, and they were like mandatory because they wanted to see your skills or whatever. And there was the first time that I competed, if you made it like the top 4 on the or on the coffee shop, they will bring you over to go to compete to the nationals. And somehow, because of not of my skills of barista, but probably my skills of talking or more like, kind of like this guy,
Convincing
being a little bit more,
people?
yeah, Yeah,
convincing
exactly. More
judges.
like, yeah, exactly. Just talking like bullshit. I don't know. I was fourth place, so I get to go to the nationals, and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. And at that time, this was 2008, 2007. And at that time, we really didn't know like what was the competition really about. So figure this guy, he goes straight to the competition. There was this guy, my other friends' competitors, they were telling jokes on stage. This was a time with competition when you used to put like, I don't know if you remember this, but in the competitions in the WB, like you need to, on your 15 minutes, you need to put your tablecloths, you need to put sugar on the table for espressos and all this stuff. And then I was the guy that flipped the portafilter down my leg and catch it. I was like, yeah, I'm rocking on and like making coffee, tamp it, flipping the portafilter down my leg. And I was like, yeah, I can make coffee like this. Obviously, it was a shitty coffee, and I got eighth place on the nationals. So it was like super fun. And I remember the time, it was like very old judges right now, obviously, but they were like, yeah, you kind of like had the mood, but you don't know what the hell you're doing on this. Like, this is not a circus. I remember those words like very clearly. And I was like, you guys have potential, but you don't know what the hell the competition is about, which is pretty funny. But at the same time, I liked it. So I was like more into competition, just kind of like trying to be funny at the same time and trying to be, you know, a little bit fun. I competed the next year and I went to nationals again and I won that year. The first time I won a competition in Guatemala. So I was like, whoa, like super excited. I was like winning a competition. This was 2008. So I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to go to Denmark. Like it was my first competition. I was looking videos of James Hoffmann last year making this tobacco signature drink with almonds and stuff, and it was pretty cool. Like I've never, and I was in point of my life that I was studying and I was working, and I was like at some point like it was like what should I do? Like should I pursue this kind of like coffee thing because traveling as much and that will kill your kind of like studies. And I got the opportunities of like my company or the company that I was working for, they were like betting on me, so they were like sending me to Mexico to train. There was this guy called Jose Arriola, which he was doing a lot of trainings and back and forth. I don't know if you knew Katie Cargillo, that now she works in counterculture. She trained me at that time, like, just to distribute coffee or whatever. Like, because the US, it was basically the top of the line, like the West Coast where Intelligentsia was like, or like Verb and all of those guys. And it was pretty cool. I went to Denmark and it was so bad. Like I didn't end up really bad. I ended up 25th of the like 40 countries, which it wasn't that bad. But I remember, and this is, yeah, before you needed to put spoons, for each judge for stir the espresso, right? Or I mean, still do, but I mean, there was like a mandatory kind of thing. And I was like delivering espressos and everything. And when I turned back and I was like, shit, I left the spoons like in my tray. And I'm like, oh, and I remember this clearly because James was like the MC. And I turned over and he was like, oh, judges, I didn't give you the spoons because the espresso was going to be so good that you needed to stir it. Like some bullshit like that. And the judges laughed. And also James on the back was laughing his ass off. And I was like, for me, that was like succeed more than I made like James Hoffmann laugh. That was like, this kind of like stereotype of your hero. And like I made him laugh. So those kind of things were like pretty funny that I understand. But Denmark for me, it was the first time that I tried a coffee that it was a natural. It was in Arisha from Daniel Ramhede. I will always remember that. And he was from Sweden. He was in sixth place, but he had an amazing coffee. He was giving espressos after his performance. And I was drinking that. I even stole the cup of Marisoko. I remember that because it was like so tasty. It was so sweet, strawberries, clean. And I was like, how the hell a coffee can taste like that? And I think that was for me, it was a turning point, that one thing. And the other one that I will always remember, I always tell this story, which I was a shitty Guatemalan. It was shame on me because this was before competing, and you're in the competition stage and you're kind of like meeting everyone. And I was with the Israel competitor, and he was like, hey, how are you? Yeah, I'm from Guatemala, I'm from Israel, blah blah blah. And it was like, so where's your coffee from? Like, what coffee are you using? And I'm like, from Guatemala, like the company gave me a bag of roasted coffee of their blends, right? So, oh yeah, because I know that he had a green book. I remember clearly. He had a green book of Guatemala, which has all the regions, all the altitudes, varieties, all of this crap. And he was like, "Yeah, I used to buy coffee from Guatemala, from Huehuetenango, from Acatenango, and this and this and that." And I'm like, "What the fuck is he talking about?" Like, I didn't know
You just
a
didn't know.
clue. I didn't know about what he was talking about, and he was like, and that for
Wow.
me was like, "Oh my God, that's so shame." I tell the story that it's funny, obviously, but it's like it put me in a perspective of like how someone from outside of origin knows more than what I have and like knows more about your own coffee or what you grow. It was just like that's so bad. So that kind of put me in a perspective of like coming back. Now I wanted it to be on specialty coffee, Now I wanted it to be, I want to know more. I want to know more about my coffee was like medium dark roast. And so judges were telling me that you should do like a lighter roast, like kind of like that stage that you are into commercial coffee and then you want specialty before. Now it's like everything is medium light into competitions. But and that for me was like kind of like game changer of like there's more to go. How can I get these flavors of lemon or like strawberry in a coffee? Like how do you get that? How is that possible? And the other one was like I need to go to a farm. I've never been to a farm. I'm a competitor, I'm a barista, you're an origin, and you being in a farm, it was not something common. You see all Nordic people from the US traveling and they go to farms because it's like, of course, they want to know the origin. And for us, it's like, yeah, it's just my backyard. I grow coffee because I throw seeds and in my backyard, there was like coffee trees and I didn't know there were coffee trees until I was in coffee. It's just like,
Can,
stupid
can
like
we
that.
can we go back because you were talking a little bit about you weren't quite fully into coffee at this point, and obviously you're learning it at the world stage about different processes. You're going to the farm. You haven't done that yet. When did you go all in on coffee? Was it at the same time? Is that coming back from the competition that led you down that path? Or did it take like a couple more years?
I think that it was like after that because I remember very clearly that I came back and it was like I tried this coffee and I went to Cobra, I went to tasted the Klaus Thompson coffees in like Denmark, and like it was like super high end coffees and it was like whoa, like I tried Finca Vista Hermosa from Guatemala and it was like this is so tasty, like how do you get those flavors? So I think that I came back and it was like all of this full of curiosity and questions that nobody could answer, because they were like on the same path or in the same way. So at that time, I think that came back and I started training again because I wanted to compete and I wanted to do better. So for me, it was like I needed to be more professional. I knew how to technique. I needed to have a lighter roast. So I started working together with a company to be like, oh, I have this coffee, but I want it lighter. It's like, why do you want to do that? And start like pulling espressos, and we have these sour, coffees that didn't make sense because you didn't have sweetness still in your mind about an extraction in espresso, right? But now it's not bitter; it's like acidic. So trying to get that kind of like balance and trying to, what's the acidic coffee or the less bitter coffee that you have on the set of six coffees blends or whatever. So I think that those kind of questions when I trained for that and I won again into the competition, I was like, okay, now the competition is in Atlanta. And there is a guy, I don't know if you know him, that is called Brent Fortune.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he was a big guy in terms of like, he was judging a lot and he was very into coffee. He helped me a lot together with Emily Oak now she used to be in Air. Now she's in, I forgot. St. Alley. But they were helping me a lot because like Brent was like following like you have potential to do this, but you need a guidance. Like you need to understand coffee, how, can this coffee be good? And he was very like friendly wise in terms of like, why didn't you come to the West Coast and see original? Just be there, watch the performances. The regionals over there was like Ryan Brown, David Petey, like it was all of this, Chris Baca, Jared Truby, all of this, the Intelligentsia is the West Coast, right? Ritual Coffee Roasters, like Barefoot, like all of this. Come to the regionals and you'll see and taste the coffees and see, like, just be around what they're doing, their performances, and try to taste, understand what's going on. So I went there. I was like, he was like, I stayed in the same hotel. We share like a room or whatever, and went to the regionals. And I tried this coffee, and it was like, what the fuck is that? Like, I went to Intelligentsia, look at the practice, and I was like, oh my god, like this tastes like Meyer lemon, cherry, chocolate, but not like a dark chocolate. It was just like a baker, like something very baker, like milk chocolate in espresso. I was like, what the fuck is this? And I was like, this is from Guatemala. And I'm like, no way. It's like, yeah, it's from Guatemala. It's from Finca La Maravilla, and it's from Huehuetenango. I'm like, no fucking way. Like, how? It was, for me, it was like mind blowing. So after all of this, I was like, yeah, we buy this coffee from Mauricio, which is blah, blah, blah. And at that time, Jeff Watts, it was like just a name, right? Like for a lot of people, it's like, oh, Jeff Watts, it's a god. And there's a book after I knew that afterwards. But it's like, yeah, Jeff buys this coffee from Mauricio and he has a relationship and blah, blah, blah. And like dogs, And went to the regionals. I saw all of this, and Chris was competing. I think that the regionals, I think it was like Devin, Ryan Wilbur, and I don't know who else, but they were like in the top three. They were like, and I was like, and I knew this guy, but heard about this Michael Phillips that, whatever. So I competed there and I won in Guatemala. And then I went to the West Coast and knew all of this. And then I came back from Guatemala, and Brenda was like, hey, will be interested to using this coffee, or did you like it that much? I talked to Jeff Watts, and he's like, coming to Guatemala and they're going to have a meeting with Mauricio. And I told him if you wanted to join. I'm like, yeah, fuck yeah. And I remember this because I was like 19 years old, man. I was like 20. I was like, no money. Like you don't, I've never been to a dinner of like important people about buying coffee or whatever. Cause it's like, it's just another world. So I was just sitting there eating like sushi, and like, sushi is not normally like cheap, like, or before it was like, it's sushi, right? Or like, I don't remember. Sitting with Mauricio, with I've never met before, from Guatemala, from Huehuetenango, amazing guy. And with Jeff Watts there, and I'm like, yeah, I'm Jeff, yeah. And I was like, I didn't know them. And I was just sitting there listening to these conversations. Jeff, perfect Spanish, talking about Spanish. And I was like, yeah, blah, blah. It was bizarre, man. It was just like sitting with Jeff Watts and Mauricio. And at some point, like they were like, Mauricio was like, yeah, I'll give you coffee. No worries. And we'll give you coffee. And at some point, Jeff, I think that he told me, or that sense, or it was afterwards, but basically Intelligentsia was going to roast, he was going to sponsor the coffee for me. Like Mauricio was going to send coffee to Intelligentsia, they were going to roast it. And because the competition was in Atlanta, they were going to drive it from Chicago to Atlanta. And I was like, oh my God. And now we'll send you coffee, roasted coffee for you to train or something like that. And I was like, oh my God, like this was unbelievable, because it was like having a Guatemalan coffee that it was amazing. Which at that point, I didn't understand how we don't have that amazing coffee in Guat, but you have it outside. Like for me, exporting quality wise, for me, it was not on the map yet in my brain. Came back and I told to the company, like, hey guys, I found this coffee. And this coffee is amazing. This is from Finca La Maravilla. These roasters, they're going to sponsor me, blah, blah, blah. And the owner, and this is a true story, and probably I've told the story before, and he was like, they have an exporter in Guatemala, which I'm gonna say the name and they were like, you cannot use another coffee unless it's from us. And I was like, what do you mean? Yeah, if you use another coffee, like, you're fired. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, that's
Wow.
And I was like, okay, but so I was in a struggle in between of like, that's not fair. And I told Brent was like kind of like best friend and telling me everything and what's going on. So they were like, okay, what we're going to do, we're going to buy you the coffee that is next to the farm. And I was like, okay, but I don't think it's going to taste the same. Like, it was just, it's not the same, blah, blah, blah. They buy me the coffee. I tasted it. I was like, no, it's not the same. It doesn't taste the same. It wasn't. And you kind of like, you're in that phase when you buy a coffee or you find a coffee, you're in love with it. and you're not, you know what it tastes like. Long story short, we go to the competition. I go with this coffee. I'd never told Intelli or to cancel this or anything. And they took coffee and they were like, someone sent me an email, like, I think it was Stephen Morrissey that was driving with Mike Phillips, and Brent was like, hey, Stephen and Mike drove your coffee to get, because they drove from Chicago to Atlanta and left the coffee like in your table that said Guatemala in a bag of 5 kilo or whatever Intelligentsia. And obviously, like, the other company didn't know about this. I was not going to use it or whatever. And then my brother and my sister were there. I was like, hey, someone left me a bag of coffee. Can you grab it for me? And just like, I don't want any trouble or anything. For whatever reasons that I don't remember that much, my coach, which was working in the company, he fight over me that night because he was drunk or something like that. And he kind of like give me a fist, like something stupid really happened. I called the owner. I was like, I'm quitting. I don't want to know anything about this. And he was like, no, don't say stupid things like that. He didn't care, pretty much. So I was like, fuck it, because I was mad. I was like, fuck no, I'm going to use the coffee that I'm going to be supposed to be using. So I used the Intelligentsia coffee, which is La Maravilla. The other coffee was like somewhere else. And I ended up using the coffee. I went to the training with everything. I tasted the coffee and I competed with that coffee, with La Maravilla, with the original coffee that I wanted to compete. And I was like, made it 7th place in that competition in Atlanta. Was the year that Mike Phillips came 3rd and Willem Davies won. And that was the year that for 7 points I didn't make the finals, which I was like,
No.
It sucked, but at the same time I was 7th. Dude, I was like from 25th and being in the 7th in the world. Like, at that time probably you just get mad, but it was like, shit, you're like 7th. It's like huge.
No, you're right there.
Great.
Okay, I gotta stop you. I got a few questions. Questions. You've been on a run here. I think it's maybe more of a statement, but I think, you're 19 and you're at this dinner and you're with, one of the great green coffee buyers in the industry. And I think it's a reminder to people that you got to say yes to opportunities when you're starting out, and just go and like seek things. So what's like a piece of advice you could give someone who's just getting into our industry, that's like, I don't know, a young barista or store manager, some, coffee professional role, that what can they do to help like elevate their career or get to the next level, whatever that means to you?
I mean, I think that overall, one of the things that I've known about coffee is like, you never know how the world is going to turn. Like, you never know, like, how right now, like, before I talked to Jeff, right now, I was talking to someone that I met like as a barista, and now he's a green buyer. And now we have a relationship, or that you will find someone that it will give you a help for a competition. Like, coffee world is so small. And one of the things that I've enjoying about world stage is that you always need to be nice to everyone, because you don't know if someone's going to help you afterwards, or you're going to be needing help from someone. And I think that sometimes we forget about that. Like, we are so stereotyped about, I'm famous, I'm the fucking god. And we're still people that enjoy the same things. Like, we like coffee, we like to give consumers good coffee. And I think that opportunities, they don't, most of the time I normally said yes to a lot of things, because you never know when that opportunity is going to come along, obviously. And you need to be also respectful about that opportunity and to embrace it. Like, if you're going to have a opportunity, give your 110%. Because I think that when maybe you're not going to have the great result that you were hoping for, but if you give your 100 and the most of you can, you're going to be happy with the outcome no matter what, and that's going to take you to somewhere better. So I would say that.
Okay, talking about outcomes, let's fast forward 2012. Should we go to 2012 or 20? Yes. Okay.
We can
hit
go.
Me with,
I'll go 2010, which that will lead me to something to 2012.
Okay.
Came 7th, blah blah blah, and wanted to compete again. And this is like a short, but my goal was to be in the top 6. My goal now was to be on top 6 in the world. So I competed again and I went to London. I'm not into this company anymore because of all of these issues. Um, and I came second in 2010 in London. And that year won Mike Phillips. But just wanted to say this because for me, I think that was a game changer. When you asked me like, what was the game changer for you? 2010 was definitely something that changed my life because until now, that was the first origin country that came really high, the highest as a producing country.
Yeah.
From that on, a lot of opportunities and door opened. I said yes to everything. I went to Jamaica, to Brazil, to Peru, to Colombia, give workshops to like just to share that time. Oh, and something happened in 2009, by the way. I went to Africa and I got appendicitis in Africa, in Rwanda.
Yeah,
And
that's
I'm
not
telling you
good.
this, I know it's not at all. And I was with Rookie and Rookie kind of like saved my life because she speaks French and they only speak French in Swahili. But I'm telling you this because I remember that was a game changer for me because I think that I understand how coffee can change a life. I was giving workshops over there and I was like one day in surgery and there was a lot of baristas on the hospital the next day waiting for me and pending for me. Baristas that I didn't even know. They were like just being there and you're like you're in the middle of the world. You could die or whatever. And there were just people and I asked them like, why are you here? Like you should be in your cafes or whatever. It's like and the response was like, you've been traveling around the world just for you to share what you know about coffee. Like, of course, you change our lives. And that for me, that phrase kind of like keeps in my mind and I'll try to remember it because you don't know how much you can change a life with a coffee or with your experience until someone says it to you. And for me, I try to always share that kind of sentence. And it was for me like, okay, now that every time that I do something about coffee, I want to give a message and I want to make it meaningful because you can change someone's life. Even though that you don't know who it is with this podcast, you can change someone's life. So fast forward to 2010, that was like kind of like game changer and it changed my life to being in the second place or whatever. I said like, I'm done. I'm not going to compete. I went to 2011 and I was like Colombia and it was like I was traveling, I was enjoying, I was everything, and this son of a bitch wins, Alejandro, and I was like, oh motherfucker. He was like, I wanted it that so bad in a good way. It was so funny, and I remember that because it was like I was with Danilo. There was a Colombia party after barista party, and I was like, I told Danilo like, shit, I'm gonna compete next year. And he's like, no, like yeah, I'm gonna compete like next year because he was like at some point I wanted it so bad and I was so close that I was like, being in that, it's just like shitty but good, but it's like
Yeah. Yeah.
and I struggled, I would say probably a couple of months in between about doing it, not doing it. You have this space on your mind of like, well, what happened if I come third? Like you're gonna be losing, people are not gonna recognize you because you're not a second anymore or like what's the right reason to compete. And I think that that's one of the reasons that kind of like we played devil's advocate a lot. It was just like about what's the right reason to compete. And in 2012 I was like, I still have something in my mind that I want to say. Like I wanted to bring this message, I wanted to do something different, and I wanted to have like this one more last dance, if you want to put it like that, about competition. And I was like, if I win or don't win, like it's fine. If I'm in the top 6, I'll be consistent, whatever. Like it's not, I don't want to get hyper or sad about it. And everything went wrong in Vienna. Like everything went so bad and wrong. I think that overall, I started to doing more quality training, that time training, to understand what is actually like a good coffee, like finding a coffee, like at that time I was like already sourcing coffee, like I needed to process some coffee with now I visited farms, now I understand it more about processing, washed fermentations, all of this stuff at origin, which kind of like lead me to, and it was the same path about Alejandro, what he did in the previous competition about using everything from the farm and put it into a competition. And for me, it was like sharing all of this, what I've learned about roasting, about processing, and put it into a cup. and tried to play around a little bit about making something different, because this is more a question to you or to audience or whatever. But for me, like, and we've talked about this with different competitors, like maybe because of the rules have changed a lot, but before there was a lot of like innovations and bending the rules at some point, like that you will see. I want to say the winner, but the top three or the top six, they were like, wow, he's doing something so different that it's like game changer about bending the rules. As far as like now, it's very, you don't see that often. Like I remember that I used to enjoy performances that maybe they didn't win, but that performance like changed my life. So I wanted it to do that. That was like, for me, it was like the message that I want to give. It's something that it's people that remember me for something, not because I win or not win. And I think that for me, I deliver that in Vienna. Like for me, it was like about, I traveled with frozen cherries. Like the first day I went 15 seconds over time, but the coffee was there. The notes were there. Everything was enjoying what the message was. I was like talking 9 minutes. I don't know if you've seen the performance from 2012, but I was like talking so much that people were
Yeah.
scared about, like, this guy's, he's supposed to be making coffee now and he's still talking. And I think that was kind of like fun of it. It was just fun, and trying to put like the judges in that spot of comfortable but uncomfortable at the same time, of like, fucking hurry up. I don't know. It was just kind of like that fun, you know? And at that point, I knew all of the judges because I was judging before as well. So for me, it was just like being, among friends. So I think that was like kind of like fun, you know? It was just delivering a message about you need to try everything from a farm, and not just to be. Mike Phillips used three different coffees for a competition, like a wash, a honey, and a natural. And for me, I've always have an idea about one coffee can have 20 different profiles. And we know that now, but before, and some people still trying to find different profiles to complement each other, even in Brewers Cup. And it's like, you need to explore more of the coffee because there's more to tell from one coffee than easier just to put in stuff. So I think that was kind of like the thing that I wanted to do in Vienna, which I think I achieved.
What does it mean to be a barista at the world stage, being from a producing country? Does that put like extra pressure on you? You feel like you have to use the coffee from that country? Does it mean more to be on the world stage and representing Guatemala or Colombia? Talk to us about that.
I think you have a little bit of pressure. Before, I think it was more than right now, because it's obviously like, even in nationals now, it's like you're not gonna be using. I remember even Silvia from Brazil. She used the coffee from in 2010. She used the coffee from Kenya, I think, or from someone from Africa, and she was like, "Oh, why she's not using Brazil? Like, what the fuck?" Like, you know. Obviously, I think that you have a little bit more resources to find certain coffees, but they forget about that most of the coffees are expensive, and you don't have sometimes the budget to buy those coffees. So before, I think that you have a little bit more pressure. And at some point, I try to look at it as an advantage to find easier from Guatemala. But at the same time, you don't have the same flavors or terroir that you could have in Ethiopia, or now that we talked about Panama more, for example. I think that you had a little bit of pressure in there. Now, I would say that even we'll talk to this about Brewers, but it's a little bit pressure as well of like, is it going to be absorbed, or is it going to be the same? It should be like a coffee should be 88 around the world. But if it's going to be well received, you know what I mean, as a not as a judge, but as everything, as a standard, whatever it is, that is. So that, I think that kind of, it's like this scary uh place, I would say, or hard. I don't know.
What? Yeah. What are some like lessons that you take away from competition overall? Like you just finished up the World Championship and Brewers Cup, and you came ninth in the world. What, like, from barista, and you've kind of competed over, I guess, 3 decades here. I shouldn't, you know.
Two. Just put it two, man. Three now. That's too much.
But what are some great lessons that a barista is listening that you've taken away from brewers or barista? Or
I think that one of the things is like just to be authentic. I think that's one of the key things that I would definitely would say in between brewers and barista, which is like totally different in some aspects. It's just to be authentic and to be clear in mind of what you want to do. And I think that overall in between brewers and barista, I feel that sometimes we forget that it's a barista competition or like a brewer's competition and not about a coffee competition. I've for brewers right now, I was trying hard on myself on keeping my idea very clean about I want to use a wash coffee and I need to find this coffee that needs to be clean and needs to be outstanding because this has always been outstanding. It's just like sometimes we forget or we need to be reminded of. So I think that trying to obviously you need to have like this alignment and to be I forgot the word but to be on the same path of what you're looking for and try to break the rules and keep your head out of the boxes like breaking paradigms. For me, I think that that's one of the main things. Like you need to break paradigms and be out of your box and to try to be yourself. Like, one of the things that I really enjoy about competition is just having fun, man. Like, I try to fuck it over in trainings all the time. And you can ask Danilo about this, or you can ask Jerome. And watching performances, like me practicing, I always put like these little words. I know that it's an inside joke. Like, I was doing like origami pino balls. I know they're balls, but I said balls because I was making this like Danilo laugh, like something like that. And like it's only stupid things like this because for me, it's competition. It shouldn't be tough. It shouldn't be stressful. Obviously, you're stressed, but it should be fun because it's like what you're trying to achieve is something to be fun all the time. And I think that that's competition that's something that you can definitely give into the judges and the judges will feel it, even consumers, like
I think competition, we got to remind ourselves it is really about, you got to enjoy the process. You got to enjoy the training. You got to enjoy whatever the outcome is. And a lot of people sometimes get lost in the only thing that matters is the outcome. And it's tough when the outcome isn't what you want. It's like, okay, you got to go back to the process. And was the process something you enjoyed? Then the outcome almost doesn't matter. Like, obviously it does matter, but becomes much easier to accept the outcome. So let's go back. You win UBC. What goes through your mind? Is it relief? Satisfaction? Tell us about that moment.
it sucked.
I feel like it's a pandemonium. It sucked. What?
I mean, so now it was very weird and now obviously it was amazing. It was a shock. I didn't, I mean, at some point I wanted it to win. And when you come to that place of second and first, and I'm like, fuck, I win. I'm like, it blows your mind. It kind of like stretches your brain out. Like there's some things that I still don't remember of that day because at some point is a relief of like a lot of stuff going on. I remember that day at the party, I was falling asleep standing up. Everyone was partying and I was like literally falling asleep because all my energy dropped. Like everything was, uh, obviously sinking in of everything that day. The next day, coming to Guatemala, people were like cheering me out. Everyone's like really happy. It was a big thing. Time to time, it was very weird because in your mindset, your whole life, 5 years, was dedicating your life. There was a purpose about competing and winning. And when you finished, I was very young. I was like 24 or 25 years old. So now I don't have a purpose in my life. What do I do now? I was just doing consultancy and I will travel the world and I was super happy about it. I was enjoying it. I would travel around the world. It will be different if I win right now. My prospect about looking forward, it will be totally different if I was like at that time. And I think that the outcome was more like about having a planification, like plan. Social media was not that intense like it was right now. And also, how do you plan? Like, because there was no one WBC, and this is not criticism. I think it's kind of like normal, but WBC kind of like you win and then like it's not like they throw you away, but you're on your own. And it's like you know this about contacting you for jobs. Like, do you want to have this job or do you want to contact this company for, because you want to do as much of your name out of it? And I didn't. And even Alejandro, you could ask himself, and like the previous champions, like you don't have anything to follow through, insecureness. Like everybody starts talking to you for more gaining, and you don't know who is trustful and who doesn't. So it's a bizarre kind of like plays in being in between because you don't know who to trust and who doesn't. So it was great, obviously. It's amazing. But at some point you don't know, like it's a weird stage that when you're young, you don't get to control it that much as the best as you could, or if I wish.
I think something that's happened too is it's kind of, there's a bit of a roadmap now, thanks to champions like yourself that have created like, here's some options that you guys can, if you win, this is some options, or place in the top 6 or win your nationals of things to do, which I think in the past that didn't really exist. And you're an example is like, you're figuring it out on the fly, which is like great
Right.
and fun, but also at the same time, we want to kind of professionalize the other side of you've finished this big goal of yours that you've dedicated 5 years of your life to, and then you're kind of like, oh, what happens now? And then the outcome is kind of unsure. And I think now it's signing deals, traveling, consulting. That's like much more, there's a through line through that, which is good. I think we want more of those outcomes because that helps the whole industry.
Yeah, and I think that before, like it was like also like what was missing on my side, I was like, oh, I want to open a shop. I want to, because coffee shop, why not? Not that it wasn't the best because I enjoyed having a coffee shop, but I wouldn't open a shop right now. It wasn't, I wouldn't, maybe, or, or not in that sense or whatever. And I think that sometimes you just go, like you say, like going like, oh, what's next? What's the next thing that you normally do? Because normally the people that won, it was people that was working for some other companies, and then you will open another company because now you're independent because you have, or you will have the resources to do it, or you will have the equipment to do it, or the support from bigger companies. So I think the kind of like the path, it was kind of the normal way, and now it's totally different. Now there's more appreciation, not just about the first place, but about the 6 or the top 9 or whatever you want to call it, because of your professional of what you do before. It's totally different. It's part of the path lines. But yeah, and overall, I think that it's matureness as well. I think it's not, even for me, like social media at some point, I, even in my head and my brain, I was like, I have the full attention. I finished my year of championship, and then no one was talking to me as before. And even for me, that was like very weird to handle it. I was in a, no one probably, I don't talk that much about it. It's okay. But I went to a little bit of depression afterwards because it was weird for me. People were like, I was not posting about coffee. So people were wondering if I was working in coffee or not. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't post that much. And not, I know people were not calling me again for, it was just weird kind of like environment. And then you understand and you kind of like embrace it to see like you are who you are. And you don't have to care about much about your environment. And that it was hard for me, but now that's why I am who I am. And I'm pretty sure about what do I do, what my value is. And that's why if I came last place in Brewers Cup, I will, for example, it wouldn't hurt. Like it would hurt in terms of like I didn't do my job, like I didn't give my 100%, but not because I came last. That makes sense.
So let's connect the dots a bit. How you win WBC. What kind of becomes your journey up until in the last couple of years? Why don't you take us through that kind of life cycle?
Right. So after WBC, and I think before WBC, I would say 2011, I opened a coffee shop called Paradigma. I closed it because of pandemic, but we opened a coffee shop. And the main thing was like, I like this about sourcing coffee. I want to have this specialty coffee from Guatemala and to be exposed because there was a lot of farmers that they didn't have a voice. And still there are a lot in Guatemala and other origins. And you might know Stephen Layton, who was owner of Has Been, and now he's owner of Drop and 3FE as well. And the guy from Red Suit being an MC. And it was like, hey, we had a conversation in a train somewhere. I think in Italy or somewhere. I don't remember. But we were in a train and he was like, but you buy coffee from Guatemala? And he was like, well, I do, but through an importer, but I don't do direct because I don't have no one that can take care of me. And I was like, dude, why don't you just talk to me? Like, I have a lot of coffees that I find. Obviously, for my coffee shop, I buy like one bag or something, but they have more. They have like 10 bags, 20 bags, 50 bags, or whatever specialty lots they have. So I was like, yeah, let's talk about it. And that from that point, I understand that there was a business there that I could develop of like sourcing coffees for friends or for roasteries or for importers around the world. And from that point and above, I started basically sourcing coffees. I work a little bit in a company called Onyx, not Onyx Coffee Lab, but Onyx Importers, a little bit in the US. But my path was a little bit more worldwide. They were a little bit more on the US side. And after pandemic, which I closed the cafe and the roastery is still going on, but the cafe would drags you a little bit more time. I started to fully committing into sourcing coffees from Guatemala, specifically specialty wise or volume wise for different companies around the world. And also I teach or help consulting farmers to make different processing, anaerobics, naturals, and stuff like that. And then I started to grow a little bit more the sourcing in El Salvador, some sourcing in Honduras. And now we're starting sourcing some coffees in Colombia, some in Panama, some all of this stuff that people need coffee from around the world. And sometimes it's just about not about buying or selling coffee, but to have a person that they can trust in the process. There's a lot of, and you know this, but there's a lot of things that happens in between buying and selling and exporting coffee that you don't, or people don't even know. Trucks, samples, milling, all of these issues that sometimes they don't know that happens. And for me, I'm trying to be the person that they can rely on and to be a trustful because of my experience, because of my skills. And, so that's what basically I'm 90% of my time I'm doing that. Beside all of
How
that.
how does it work? I reach out to you. We want to buy some Guatemalan coffee. Take me through the sales cycle, I guess,
Right.
of what that looks like. Just so people have an understanding, because I think a lot of people don't really know the true seed to cup of like how that works. Like, how do you approach a producer about certain lots, or how do you pick you're working with producer A instead of B? Just run us through that real quick.
So basically, so there is like a catalog, if you want to put it like that, of farmers that I already work with. So let's say, hey, Raul, I want to buy some coffee from Guatemala. It's like the quick question is like, what do you need? What do you want? I'm looking for a container coffee, but I want to mix it. I want to have 100 bags of like this regional coffee that I use for my espresso blend washed. And I also want some sort of micro lots. And then I have micro lots, I would call it 85, 86 coffees. And then I'll have mid high ends, 88, 89 coffees, for example. So I'll basically, in terms of like how much price or, budget you want to do, I send you kind of like a price list of what we normally can work with in terms of like between regionals and microlots and different farmers that we work with in between washed and naturals. And then the high end stuff, which are like rare varieties, geishas, or specifically. And then sometimes they pick or they come to origin, depending on who it is. And I'll send, obviously, coming to origin is better because they can cup whatever 50, 40 coffees. Normally, I basically pre-source for you because that's part of my job is to be, the easiest way for you, instead of like you doing all the job, like I'm trying to, just to be there for you so you can cup the coffees and it'll be easy journey for you. So I'll try it. And obviously like trying to meet over the expectations because you will want something, but I don't know what you sell to your customers. So we need to calibrate in between what your customers want, and I will understand that to put that specific on the table for you. So let's say that you cup all the samples or whatever you like, and you like different coffees, and we export it directly from origin. We don't export to like from the States or from other places. Like I'm not working as an importer, but we try to give you options from directly from the origins. And the program that I have is that I buy directly from the producers. We buy the coffee from them and we put them in the warehouse. So the producer is covered on the money side, on the cash flow. And then we are 100% secure that that coffee is in our warehouse. And then we export it through an exporter. And the reason that what we do this it probably might cost us a little bit more in terms of financing. But the reason why is that we don't like to offer a coffee that is not ours, because as a buyer, I understand like, oh, I have this coffee, and then I was like, oh, it's not available, and you're like, man, and I sometimes I understand that it takes time. So we take care of the producer in that sense, and that for us is a trust in between that we are the buyer for the producer and we are the seller for the customer or the importer or the roaster. And that gives us a free, and it has been working, that we give us a free transparency in terms of like, you want to know where your coffee comes from? For sure. Here's the producer. And we're not afraid that the customer is going to jump us or like avoid us on this middle part. And obviously the producer is going to feel secure that we have a relationship together because we're building up relationships in long term. And it's been working really well. And then we're trying to find new coffees. If I find a coffee that is really good, I just buy it, and then we kind of like offer it. And we source and we buy coffees from farmers that are very famous, you want to put it like that, or well known, or we buy coffees from people that are not well known. But we try to find what you need, because I only source specialty coffee, and yes, but sometimes you need to fill up a container, and that's not bad. Like every coffee has their own market, depending on where you want to go.
What are some of the struggles that producers are kind of facing that you've seen in the last couple of years, as your role's been full-time sourcing coffee?
I think that besides pricing or whatever, taking that aside from this year, I would think that labor is one of the, weather of course, but labor is one of the things that is affecting the whole Central America for sure. People are not, it was kind of the thing about Carlos was saying, like in the presentation, like people are not, they don't want to do coffee anymore. They want to do YouTube. They want to be podcasters or whatever, or they want to, or,
there's no money in it. Don't do it, people.
Right,
there's
exactly.
no money. No one listens. Don't do it.
But there's a lot of people that the American dream, they want to go to the US and they want to work there, and they get money back from the States, and they don't want to, being an agronomist now, it's very hard. Like there's no future in coffee sometimes. So I think that having labor for picking, it's very hard. So you need to pay more, but still it's not about paying more. It's about having the people to be, in a farm, normally you will have regularly 3 picks. Now you have to do only 2 or just 1, and you have less yield, or your yield becomes less quality, and the same quantity but less quality and more commercial copies. So that's kind of like one of the main things that issues.
How do we solve that? Can we solve that?
I think that it's very hard, and I think it needs to be a little bit more appreciation about coffee. People are forgetting about, and it's a stupid statement that someone said to me in a big role, but we're going to end up without coffee. Like at some point, there's no going to be more coffee, like because people are going to be here in Guatemala. Every year, you find like people are selling coffee, or they want to make houses out of a farm, or they want to, instead of planting coffee, they want to plant cardamom because it's more, have more revenue.
To produce or makes more money.
Yeah. So, and even for a picker, you pay like $10 or whatever, or $20 per bag, and for cardamom, you pay $100. Like, so appreciation. I think that we need to have. I think that the best thing that we could do is buy more coffee. It's not just buying expensive coffee, but just in general, buying more coffee in a good pricing terms. I think that if you're working with a farmer directly, like buy more coffee from them, it's going to be more sustainable for them than buying more expensive coffee, I think sometimes. Because sometimes what they need is not just about pricing. And yeah, you could buy like an expensive geisha, and that will use it for planting more coffee, but it's not going to be sustainable for the whole farm. So then you're just going to start, some of the reality of the farmers is like they don't use sometimes the money to the right things. And some of the farmers, they sell directly to exporters. And not that exporters are bad, because we need exporters, but I think that buying more from farmers and buying consistently, that makes it better. This year was a problem, for example, because of the pricing. Everyone is saying, yeah, of course, the pricing are high, but it wasn't sustainable for everyone. A lot of farmers couldn't deliver. A lot of people couldn't buy that coffee because it was very expensive. And a lot of roasters didn't have the cash flow to buy, or importers, so It's tricky.
Do you see the C market affecting things a lot? Or there's like this weird contrast of like specialty coffees associated with it, but not associated with it. And sometimes it's there, and then sometimes it's not on pricing. And like, I don't know, how do we solve like the proper price equation going forward that it's, you know, sustainable, like you said, for roasters, but it's also sustainable for producers, and then the end consumer it's sustainable for as well.
I mean, I think that overall, I think the big problem was that it was like too fast, too high, too fast. Because I think that overall the pricing, I think that we're right now, I think it's okay. Like below, like in between 350 is like, that's a reasonable price. But the problem, I think it was too fast. And you have different perspectives. One of them is the producer one, which is I have specialty coffee and I've always been above of the C market, which it doesn't affect me. But right now, a commercial coffee of 80 points is going to cost me $4. And normally my red bourbon that it's an 85, it costs normally 4.25. Do I want to be close to that gap? Because now a commercial coffee is 4, and how am I going to differentiate myself from 4.25? And I've heard this from farmers, and they go like, I have to go higher than that. So now my coffee is going to be 4.75 because they want to differentiate, because that's a specialty coffee, right? You want to differentiate yourself from the commercial side. So that's one thing. The other thing is like, there was farmers that I don't want to lose. You've been supportive to me long terms, so I don't want to lose you as a customer. So I'll maintain my prices, or depending on my cost, I can handle it. And I think that's kind of like a fair, square strategy, depending on your customers. And then you have the side of the exporters. They didn't have the cash flow to buy more coffee, so they were short. And then the importers, they didn't want to spend more money because they didn't have money, so they want to go long into positions, because the roasters, they don't want to pay. You want, as a roaster, you want to pay what you have available right now at the pricing, because you don't want to put more costs into the cup of coffee that people won't buy you later, which that will be the end result. You need to, 10 cents more in a cup is not much as in a, right? But for answer your questions, I don't think that there's a right answer, but eventually we need to go everyone higher on our cup of coffees and try to understand that a coffee has always been under the value. And now you have in US the tariffs or whatever, but I think that it was too high, too fast. I think the next year and a couple of years is going to be talking about the new normal on coffee, because at the end, like everybody, at the beginning, I remember January was like crazy. It was like everyone was panicking. And now people are requesting coffee because they still make coffee with expensive prices.
Yeah. Yeah. It's where do we find the middle ground that it's kind of working for everyone? And I think it's like the slow trickle up is probably that place wherever, from 3 to 350 to 375. And over the course of a year or two, like companies everyone along the value, can handle this kind of a slow move upwards, instead of it's just hard and fast. In a month, it rips $1.25.
Yeah, but yeah, I think that we'll gain a little bit more confidence, and I think the key thing for me this year was communication, because now you'll find out like who is actually in a good relationship in between your customers and good relationships in between your farmers, because I think that you're always going to have issues in coffee. Like you're always going to have, but one thing is that strong relationship and talking things through are going to be the ones that are going to be stretching out your good relationships in the future that will help you out. And I think it's always should be like that. I'll help you, you'll help me, and we'll get through this together. So
what are your thoughts on like these new innovations in like processing that we've seen in the last 5 years? Is that
like infusing coffees?
Infusing, co-ferment, whatever style you want to kind of call it. Has that hit Guatemala? And then what do you see the trend kind of going to? Give me your thoughts, buddy.
So if I put myself into competition mode, I would say it's like it's not about competition mode. So before I was like, this is shitty. Like you shouldn't have like infused coffees because coffee normally, or the process represents the terroir of the coffee. And, you used to have a washed coffee because it represents like you have a lot of water or whatever, or natural. So you don't have enough water, you have the climate or whatever. Obviously, I think at some point it was good for the industry to understand what else we can do for coffee. I think that in terms of like the immersion or like the putting flavors into the coffee is not the right way to go. But then on the side of the roasters, I see that people buying it, even though people that are using specialty coffee. And let's say that you buy 5 containers and 10% of that people buy infused coffees or cold fermented or whatever you want to call it. And the question is like, why? And then one guy was like, well, this attracts customers that are normally coming from this Starbucks or like sugar drinks. And then now they can identify a flavor easier than if I tell them like, oh, try this jasmine, blueberry, whatever. But if this is peach, it's just peach and you can actually smell it and taste it. So for them, it's easier to go as an identifier instead of like this being a professional guy that can identify flavors in a cup, which is magical, and it's easier for them. So if ask me, it's not the right path to go as a coffee professional because it's in a competition. Now they're scoring it not as high as before, which was understandable, but probably I think is they're going to go a little bit trendy and then eventually they're going to drop down a little bit, and probably we're going to, as an industry, are going to identify it as a coffee. It was the same thing like before, and we don't talk about this, but before we used to have coffees, roasted coffees that we put sugar or cinnamon or vanilla into the coffees, and it was very trendy. And obviously it was not specialty coffee, but people were drinking it. So I know that right now, as we processing, it was probably one of the easiest way. Guatemala, we don't do that yet. Not that I know of, not that I've tried, but I have been requested it. Do you have? Do I want to go to that path? I don't think so. But it's like, how can you avoid it? I think that there's like the same phases of like before Guatemala, you don't want to go into naturals because that sucks. And now we're making naturals. So I think that's something that we have to go through that path, everyone. Eventually, I think that at some points we're going to go back. Like, for example, I wish, like really wish that next year Brewers Cup we'll see more wash coffees in competition because it's possible to represent something very clean, even naturals, but very clean, and trying to remember that what we're sourcing or we're trying to look at is for that cleaner coffees, right? Instead of like hard fermentations. I remember 3 years ago a lot of people were wanting strong fermentations like pineapple straightforward, and now right now it's like you try that, it's like that shit is like too strong.
And do producers ever come to you and ask about like seeing this on competition stage, or they've heard other producers are doing it and they're thinking like, how can we get on this trend or do this? Or is that never kind of come across your plate?
I think that more of the naturals, a lot of people are asking me, a few people are asking me about infused coffees, a couple of people, but most of the people are asking like, how do you make naturals? How are you making naturals? And I think that they're trying out. And when you cup the coffees, you see that result of like strong fermentations because someone told them like, this was not because it was good, because it was sold. I used to sold this last year. I sold this. So they want to do the same and able to make a business out of it, which is fine. But it's like, we're trying to show them the path of like, yes, but you need to make them cleaner. You need to make them softer. I've seen a lot of people that were asking me a lot of naturals, like intense naturals, anaerobics, and now they want to do like, oh, but we need more like the normal naturals, like the regular, not anaerobic. And it's kind of like trendy of like, we want strong, and now people are like, and this was more on the Middle East. Have you been to Dubai? And then it's like, you have these strong fermentations, and now year after year they're like, yeah, but we want something softer, we want something cleaner. And I think it's about like, the thing about coffee is like, Guatemala, just Colombia, they produce all the year, but you have to wait 1 year and able to change all of these things. So I think that eventually Guatemala is very behind in terms of like all of these infused coffees, and eventually we're gonna go up there, and then Colombia is gonna be doing something different, and then it's going to come along like 3 years later. The question is like, where are we going to end up with? Like, what else, you know?
Yeah, I think the future state of our industry is always in I don't know, flux as we progress through this. Like you're saying, back in 2010, it was all about wash, and then we were doing a bit of honeys, and a few people were doing naturals, and that's flipped now. And I think in 10 years, it'll flip again, and we'll kind of find new trends. I think it's good. I think it's okay.
I think that also it's about generations. I mean, you'll have the generation of like Stephen Morrissey, and I put an example of not this bad, but that generation when I was starting in coffee in 2006, 2008, and it's like people didn't like naturals. And still today, it's like, no, I want a good washed. And now people from right now, it's like, oh, I want a natural. Of course, wash, it tastes like tea. So it's about also like generational that changes and how do you approach that means that I'm very old and probably you as well. We'll see each other.
No.
No, but we'll see each other like in 10 years and we'll be discussing about, remember what we talked about, like 20 years it was washed, 10 years ago it was naturals, and now what's going on.
Which is good.
So, yeah,
I think that's a good thing. The industry's very young. We're always innovating, which is like good and bad. It's good because there's not the walls restraining us from doing only these things. We're always trying to, move to something innovative. But the problem with that is then the whole industry goes there. And then we realize like, oh, we've gone a bit extreme on fermentation. We come back a bit. That's okay. We're in that coming back, I think, a little bit, which is nice.
But I'm going to ask you a question. Like, would you like to see like a washed Ethiopia, or not a wash, but just an amazing coffee from Ethiopia? And you want to see it like infused?
Like,
I mean, like,
no,
why
no,
do you, like,
no.
what would you, there's, but yeah.
I think there's a place for everything. So I think there's a place for wash coffees, beautiful wash coffees. There's a place for honeys. There's a place for naturals. There's anaerobics through all that. I think there's a place for infused or co-ferment, whatever you want to call them. And the place there is like, it's, if it can get producers, more money, if it's a way to bring people into the industry because they can identify pineapple through and through, I think that is a good thing. Or it creates new flavors to experience in the cup when you combine it with milk, and it tastes like cheesecake or whatever dessert. And it's like, those are good things. We got to find things that are sustainable for everyone through, the value chain. And so if producers can do that long term, I think it's a good thing. If they want to innovate down that path, that's great. And if they want to stay, some people would say pure or something else, they can stay there too. And it's like, we got room for everyone. We need more coffee. Just like you said, we need more coffee.
Right.
And we got to sell more coffee to make it all work. So
I agree.
How can we get people out of just normal commercial coffee into specialty coffee? I think that's the goal, and not a solution, just kind of a theory on where to take things. So, but we gotta keep going. I want to go to you. I want to, don't look stunned. I want to ask you personally a few questions. What is like relaxation, and where do you get inspiration from? Where do you go in your mind for that? Where do you go to a place? Where do you go to an area? I don't know, like a restaurant. What does that look like?
Like a coffee place, like coffee inspiration, or you seem like
anything, man. Just general inspiration.
To be honest, like one of my main things is my family. Like my wife and my kids, they drag me into this place of like, I want to be the best for them, or I want to be the best example of my kid was my 6-year-old. He was like, but you need to bring a trophy. And I was like, damn, I'm going to work hard for that, and, didn't bring it or whatever, but it's like, just for him to tell him like, yeah, dude, but I'm 9 of the best in the world. Like, it's just kind of like in a good way of like, you need like that inspires me just to be better. Like I can be better, and
nice,
like that kind of place I like. And in terms of like places or whatever, I just music, man. I love music, and I every time that I put my headphones or whatever, I just jam in myself and I lose myself of like being outside of the world. Like I try to be in a bubble of, and when I go to a farm, that's when sometimes it's very tiring to go to farms, in terms of like job. But when I go to a farm, I really enjoy just to shut up, just to understand where you at. Like you're a little dot in no one's land, and it's just you're trying to enjoy the moment, because you're sometimes just full about stress. And so, yeah, farm is a place that you can just sit down, have a coffee, or just like listen, like just listen to nothing. You know what I mean?
Or nature, yeah, take it all in. It is.
Yeah.
It's such an inspiring place that sometimes we forget. You just gotta just walk, take it all in.
Right. Yeah.
If you could change one thing in the industry, just snap your fingers, change it all right now, what would it be?
I laugh because I asked that to the podcasters oh my God. And I hate that question. Damn, man. I don't know. I think that probably one of the things that it would be amazing is just to have like, I don't want to say a language, but like one language instead of like if I could understand like producers, or I could understand a producer from Ethiopia, for example, and to understand it fully of what he would say, not just to know another language, like that would be something amazing. Just to be having that transparency of language. Because sometimes when I'm with farmers, sometimes I don't ask questions. I just listen and I just learn. Imagine just to go to a farm or a farmer, listen to a roaster and just like listen to them, like just to understand the environment. That would be amazing. Just to have like a headphones and it's just like I mean, there is, but
I think,
like, you know what I
yeah,
mean?
you got to do ChatGPT, man. You got to fire that up. You just
Yeah, of
talk
course,
into it.
But imagine just to be like really, really fun, just to be in a farm and then you're like listening to the family of what's going on, what their difficulties, what their dinner, what like whatever. And that will be so much to understand the environment of like not just about the coffee, but how do they get there? Like that would be so much appreciation of everybody's life. That would be so cool.
Nice.
Is it?
Go ahead.
No. I was just saying that. That's like not gonna happen, but that would be cool.
What's next for you? What's like the next 6 to 12 months?
Well, I think that one of the things that right now it's Guatemala, and it's finishing exporting what we have in Guatemala, and then the rest of it is just like trying to focus on different origins to offer a little bit more. Trying to gain a little bit more of the other countries that I'm trying to source from, from Panama, from Colombia, and trying to connect for a lot of people that they were needing some coffees and trying to populate a little bit more the word of Guatemalan coffee, because that's one of the main things for me is just to be an ambassador of Guatemalan coffee aside from other origins. And so, yeah, I think that for me is being in the shows or whatever, or shows that I can, just to promote more Guatemalan coffee. Because for me, I think that we need to promote more of the Guatemalan coffee. And I think that it's been a little bit forgotten of what there is around. And I'm trying always to be one of the voices of Guatemalan coffee, that I put myself in the back of like, I'm an ambassador of coffee, Guatemala. So,
you are, man. You do such an amazing job for Guatemalan coffee, man. And I think for the industry as a whole, and just keep grinding.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Where can people find you online? What's, your Instagram, your LinkedIn, whatever you use, website, fire it.
Yeah. So OnlyFans. No, I'm kidding. No, I'll do Instagram. Instagram is Raulito Barista, and then you go TikTok is the same Raulito Barista, and then I'll have YouTube, which I have a couple of videos there, mostly in Spanish because I'm doing a lot of videos or content a little bit more for Spanish speakers. I'll do more English now. I'm trying to do that as well, like reviews of products and stuff like that, but more to get to the consumer and not as a that geeky. Like, but I wanted to go more for consumers, for Spanish or English or whatever. So yeah. And if you want to YouTube or TikTok or Instagram, I'm there. So yeah. And if you want to go for more like direct for green coffee, they want to contact me on Instagram or WhatsApp. You can find my WhatsApp or whatever number in Instagram. So easy peasy.
Awesome. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah,
Thanks for
man.
taking the time. I love
No, thank
I love
you.
hearing the journey. I learned lots of details today, and no, it's super inspiring, and I think a lot of people will gain a lot out of it. So keep.
No, thanks a lot for your time, man. This is amazing, and you congratulations, because I've seen a couple of episodes. You asked me before, but I've and this is a hard work being,
Podcasts are
this
hard,
time and
man.
everything. I know.
Trying to get people to listen is hard. It's like growing
Yeah.
YouTube is hard, but you just got to keep grinding, I guess.
I agree with you, and congrats, and this is amazing, man. So keep doing it, and we'll see
Thanks,
each
dude.
other soon, hopefully.
See you in Milan.
I'll probably be there. Yeah.
Okay, we'll see you in Milan.
Okay.
Okay, thanks,
Okay.
man.
Take care, buddy. Appreciate it.